Hello guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. The Goddess and the Demon King, Book 1, The Goddess's Journey by Raven_Draws. Chapter 5. The Fated Ones and the Emperor's Verdict. A celebration? After the dwarves regained their composure and collected the swords, Kaido left shortly after. Kaijin suggested we have a celebration. Even though I technically took your job from you. Of course. Thanks to you, I was able to fulfill the work order in time. You must let me treat you, he insisted. Thank you very much for the offer. However, I have to decline. Our business is now done since I was able to meet you, so we will be on our way back. I turned around and started walking to the door, preparing to leave. Or, at least that was the plan. But there'll be beautiful women there, Garm insisted. That's right. From pretty young things to mature types. I take a minute to think about it, then sigh. Sigh. Fine. I guess you're not getting rid of me that easily. Very well. Let's go to this place. I gave in as they celebrated that I'd be going with them. Oh, how low I've gotten, must be my demon side kicking in, a nice glass of wine would do. Welcome. I follow Kaijin and the other dwarves to where they want to go, and we enter a place named Butterfly. We had to leave Gobta outside since he's just a kid and can't drink yet. It's a bar that seems to be filled with elves and looks quite fancy too. Once we fully enter, one of the elves spots me and hugs me, putting my head on her chest. Ah, she's so cute. Then very shortly after, I get squished by the rest of them, resulting in me being in the middle of the rest of the elves being hugged. I can't breathe. Negative. Demons don't need air to breathe. I'm still being squished. Well, at least she seems to be enjoying herself. I heard Kaijin say. Traitor. The elves calm down and we finally sit down and get our drinks, vintage for the dwarves and a glass of red wine for me. I'm truly grateful to you, my good demon. You helped me uphold my good standing with His Majesty. But I still can't wrap my head around how you just multiplied my best work in mere seconds. I chuckle a bit while taking a sip of my wine. All demons have a skill named material creation. I used your perfect original sword as the base, then after analyzing it, using my magicules and magisteel, I created identical copies of them. However, most of the credit should go to you, Kaijin. The craftsmanship of that single sword was stunning. It's true what your brothers say about you. You are one of, if not the greatest blacksmith I have met. Kaijin takes a minute before speaking again. Well, what was your request? That I visit your village. Well. I raise my glass. Excuse me, Madam Proprietress. Would it be all right if you could pour more wine for me and vintage for my friend here? Ma'am. Kaijin is a blacksmith in this country. And his loyalty to the king is quite high. He seems to be a very upright and honorable dwarf, so I don't want to force his hand. If he gives in and comes with us, then perfect. However, if he doesn't, then no harm is done and we can look for someone else. Hey Ms. Demon. Do you want to try this? One of the dark elves came from behind the couch with a magic orb in her hands. I tilt my head. I'm pretty good with it, you know. People say I blow their minds. So let's read your fortune, she exclaims happily. What are you going to foresee? I inquired. Good question. What do you want to know? Everything. Who am I? What am I? Am I royalty? Why can't I remember anything except for certain things? What was that place that I woke up in? That seems like a good place to start. The elf sitting next to me speaks up. Perhaps we should divine who your fated one is. Well, I guess that works too. Oh, that's a good idea. The dark elf exclaims. That could work well since I could find someone who could know of me, but then again, probably not. Even though, fated one, doesn't always mean lover. I am a little curious on who could be my partner. Aha. There's the image. Wait, there's 3? What? My face immediately turns red in embarrassment. How could I have 3? I look back at the orb and look at the 3 of them. The first looks like a woman with long black hair and black eyes with a big burn below her left eye. She has a mask in her hand that looks strangely familiar. The second is a woman with long black hair arranged in a side ponytail with blue eyes and has the same mask as the first. Then, there's the third. A man sitting on a throne in a dark throne room with black hair as black as darkness and black and red eyes. The first and second are familiar because of that mask, but the man himself is quite familiar to me for some reason. Isn't that first woman the conqueror of flames, Shizu Izawa? Kaijin pointed out. You know her? I inquired. Not personally, she's a guild hero. Looks like a young human girl, but she's been around for decades. I believe she's retired from the guild now, and is busy training warriors off in some country or other, he states. A hero. The second one looks familiar as well. If I'm correct, by the attire and that mask, then she's the masked chosen hero. The way the story goes is, around 300 years ago, she supposedly appeared out of nowhere and sealed the storm dragon in the sealed cave. She hasn't been seen since. I see. Well, Veldora, looks like I found your hero. Then the third one I have no idea of. From the way he looks to be a demon lord. However, I don't think he's any of the 10 demon lords, he explained. Demon King, I mutter. I shake my head. No, don't mind me, just wondering about the 3 of them. Are you curious about your fated ones, Ms. Demon? I felt blood rushing to my cheeks. Huh? Curious. You could say that. I am quite curious about the 3 of them, so much so that there is a familiar part of them, the mask for the women, and the man himself. That mask is very familiar, like I should know it, almost like it's been a part of me. Then the man, he's as familiar as the mask, if not more so. The aura and feeling I get when I look at him makes me feel like I should have known him practically my entire life. Who are you 3? The chime of the door opening could be heard with one of the elves standing up to greet them. Another visitor? Welcome. Madam. Do you allow the likes of children in your establishment? An arrogant voice yells. Pardon. But, sir, this girl is a true lady. What? I look up and see a man wearing fancy clothing with a goatee and a long mustache. He keeps staring daggers at me. Are you trying to tell me that girl isn't a child? Oh great, it's Minister Vesta. Kaijin mutters. Ah, so this is the one who set you up to fail. He does look like that type of person. Vesta walks towards the counter, grabbing a large jug of water before walking towards us and splashing me with said water. Luckily I made it so that only I was splashed. HMPH. This is the best a child like you deserves, he scoffs. Oh no. The elf next to me grabs a towel and helps me dry off. Don't worry, I'm just fine. More importantly, are both of you okay? On the inside though, I'm furious. However, I'll stay put since I don't want to damage the bar or Kaijin's reputation. Now. You're coming with me. You're not even allowed to be here. He grabs my arm and begins to pull me off the couch I'm on. I was about to release my wings, but then I saw Kaijin stand up and Vesta seemed to notice it too, and he began rushing towards him. Why, Kaijin? I didn't know you were a customer of this. He then punched Vesta so hard that he slammed into the back wall. How dare you insult and even touch my savior? Why you knave? What gives you the right to speak to me like? Come again. He growls. Eep. He then rushes for the door before shouting something else. Why you'll pay for this insult. Kaijin turns back to the elf. I'm sorry about the damage to your business, madam. Oh, that's all right. Was that wise, Kaijin? He's a minister, right? Are they going to kick you out of the city now? I inquire. Not a problem if there's a new place that needs me, he grins. But you've worked so hard for the king. You're just going to leave him? I figured you'd bring that up. His Majesty wouldn't be happy if I'd turned the other cheek when my savior was insulted. Not standing up for you would have dishonored my king. So for better or for worse, I'm with you now. I begin to smile. All right. As a matter of fact, I was hoping you would come to that decision. He laughed. I figured. But wahahaha. The celebration went on for a little bit longer. Kaijin would ask questions here and there and I would answer him back. However, they came knocking. Brother, Rimuru, what have you got yourselves into? HMPH. I only gave a fool what he had coming to him. He scoffs while I just sigh and let Kaido take us. 3 days later, our trial in front of the king begins. As I look up at him, he exudes true power over the courtroom, so much so that I bet if you talk out of turn, he could more than likely have you executed. However, for some reason, I wasn't afraid like everyone else in the room. In fact, I feel calm and somewhat happy when I sense his aura, almost like it has a familial feeling to it that you're going to be okay when being around him, like a father protecting his family. He must have noticed my gaze since his blue eyes are now locked with my golden pair. It felt like hours that we'd been staring into each other's eyes, but it was only a few seconds. I immediately begin looking back down to not keep the attention on me. What was that? That was something, and his eyes somehow had the same feeling as my own, like we're similar somehow. I shake my head and keep my focus away from the king and back to the trial at hand. From what I understood, the only people who can speak freely are nobles who are count or greater. We are the ones part of the trial, however, until the king gives the confirmation, we aren't allowed to speak a word to anyone. Merely speaking out of turn will immediately give us a harsher sentence, regardless of who is part of the trial or what they've done. I look over at the person who will be representing the defendants, our side, and all I can say is that he's suspicious. Even when we met him while we were in jail, I didn't like the air around him. If I think about how this is going to go, then, it won't be pretty. And it was at that point that Minister Vesta, who was enjoying himself and posing no trouble at all, was set upon by Kaijin and his cohorts and subjected to multiple physical injuries. Our representative states. I had a feeling he was going to say something like that, but, multiple physical injuries? Seriously? He was only punched once. Is this true? I heard the plaintiff's representative ask. It is. I've received a statement from the business corroborating as much. Our representative answered. I look over to Vesta and see that he has a giant smirk on his face, almost turning into a grin. I knew that he possibly bribed our representative. He seemed like the type of person who would do that. I think back to what Kaijin told me about him while we were in the cell. 2 days ago. I wanted to know more about Vesta and who he was, so I asked Kaijin about him since it seemed like he knew him personally. Years ago, I was the leader of the Crown's engineering team. Vesta was my second in command. He began. He came from a noble family. I'm sure he didn't appreciate having to report to a commoner like me. We butted heads frequently right from the start. In his haste to make a name for himself, Vesta rushed on a major project, and the plan to create Magisoldiers failed. I took the fall for that failure, and had no choice but to quit the force. No consequences for Vesta? I tilt my head. He shook his head. Nope. He wheeled an officer of the military to provide a false statement to back him up, thus ensuring that all responsibility for the failure fell on my shoulders. Oh no, he then pointed to the other 3 dwarves. These fellows here helped look after me. For all of their clumsiness and everything else, they fought hard to defend me. And then we all got kicked out of the military together. He and the other dwarves began laughing. He continued. But, I don't think he's necessarily evil. As I said, he and I never saw eye to eye, but he was always a careful study and a hard worker. He rushed that project out of his desire to meet the king's expectations of us. If anything, I suspect that his behavior would improve quite a bit if I were simply out of the picture. Present. After that talk I had with Kaijin, I began to look at Vesta from a new point of view. From my perspective, he isn't entirely evil, per se, but he's not entirely good. He's more misguided than anything. From being born into a wealthy and noble household, he began to believe that he's better than everyone else. That changed when he met Kaijin, and he, more than likely, started to become jealous of his skill and knowledge, making him how he is now. If things continue as they are in this courtroom, then things won't be good for us. My king, I beseech you to punish these miscreants to the fullest extent, so that they learn the error of their ways, Vesta shouted. Kaijin, the king said in a deep and soothing voice, echoing throughout the room, leaving everyone who heard it completely silent. Yes, your majesty. Kaijin immediately stood up straight as he was called by the king. We haven't spoken in a long time. Are you well? The king asked with a genuine smile on his face. Yes, your majesty. Kaijin kneeled, and I am pleased to see that you appear to be in good health as well. He waved him off. Enough of that. Do you feel like returning yet? Unfortunately, your majesty, I must inform you that I have a new master to follow. He looks up to the king. And I cannot disobey her orders, even for your sake. The king became forlorn. I see. However, if it's who I think, then I believe that you will be in good hands. I shall now render my verdict. Kaijin and his companions are hereby banished from the nation. At the stroke of midnight tonight, you will no longer be permitted to stay within our borders. That is all. Now be gone from my sight. The 4 of us stood up from our kneeling position and started walking to the door to leave. Before going through the door, I looked back at the king one last time before turning around and leaving with the others. If you were talking about me at that moment, then you won't need to worry, I'll take care of them. Oh, 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 third Pav. Meanwhile, soon Rimuru and Kaijin left the courtroom with the other dwarfs along with the other nobles, leaving the king sitting on his throne and Vesta. The king wasn't paying attention to the trial as he knew of Vesta's jealousy towards Kaijin and knew how it was going to end. What the king was paying more attention to was the demoness, Rimuru. Especially since he heard of the potion she made. Vesta. The king called out, getting his attention. One of the guards brought over a potion on top of a pillow with the king picking up the bottle. Look at this. What is? I received this extra potion from the chief guard. Apparently, it was strong enough to fully heal all the miners, he stated. Vesta began to examine it as it was brought over to him. As this, a full potion. But, even the best dwarven techniques cannot produce a solution more potent than a mere, high potion. How did this? I would love to know how it's made, he thought. It truly is a shame to lose a minister whose eyes shine with such curiosity. But, your majesty, wait. It was the demon girl who brought us that potion. He answered, shocking Vesta. During the trial, I locked eyes with the girl. You know what I saw by just looking into her eyes. What I saw were the eyes of a ruler in making. The same eyes I had when I first became the king. And your actions have now severed any relation we might have had with that girl. Is there anything you wish to say for yourself, Vesta? He started to stagger. Why am I being interrogated by the king? He began to think. When I was young, I saw his triumphant return, and swore an oath that I would serve the king's noble cause. I ask you again, Vesta. Do you have anything to say to me? He said in a disappointed tone. Vesta fell to his knees in realization. Oh, I see. I have made a mistake. The moment I let my jealousy of Kaijin consume me, I fell down the wrong path. No, nothing, your majesty. The king stood up from the throne. I see. You are hereby forbidden from entering the palace. Never show yourself before me again. But know this, Vesta. Your work until this day has been a great service to the nation. He began walking out of the courtroom before calling out to the shadows. Spymaster, keep tabs on that girl's activities. At once, the spymaster appeared. Do not let yourself be detected, he commanded. Not on my life. They disappeared back into the shadows. The king then began thinking of the demon girl and her power. She was a demon with a presence on par with the colored primordials, and even as great as the storm dragons. My skill wasn't even enough to look into her heart. But those eyes, they're like mine when I first became king. She will make a great ruler one day, I just know it. I hope I get to see you again, Rimuru. Oh, Rimuru Pav. Meanwhile, wow, that was kinda touch and go for a minute there. The five of us finally made it out and we returned to our camp outside the entrance. Once we arrived back, I began to tell them about Kaijin and that we got arrested. But it ended up pretty much as I expected. I'm relieved that you were unharmed. But they actually put you to trial? Rigger asked me. It seemed like I got off lightly for good behavior. I then gestured to the dwarfs. Oh, and I haven't introduced you yet. This is a blacksmith. Kaijin. What's wrong? I look over to Kaijin and see that he has gone pale. Perhaps he's startled by the Tempest Wolves? Rigger suggested. Oh, that makes sense. Anyway, continuing onward. This is Garm, the eldest of 3 brothers. He's a very skilled armorsmith. Next is Dord. They tell me he's the finest craftsman of any dwarf. Then finally the youngest, Murd. He's good with his hands, and knows much about construction and art. Kaijin was the only one I made a deal with, but the others got kicked out of the country with us, so I invited them to join us as well. I explained. Well done, Lady Rimuru. Now, shall we return to the village? Even though it's just been a few days, I think I'm getting a little homesick. Me and the others laughed. Wait, I feel like we're missing one. How could you do this to me? I turn my head to the voice and I see Gobta rushing towards us on a Tempest Wolf. Ah, right. Gobta. It's not far, Lady Rimuru. A bunch of scary soldiers showed up, and I nearly cried out in front of them, he complained. Alright, sorry. Next time we come back, I'll let you enter the place from before, I offered. Really? You promise? You gotta swear it to me? I wave him off. Fine, I promise. I look back at him and see that he's jumping with joy. He really does have a one-track mind, doesn't he? Though how did he ride back on a Tempest Wolf? Probably should figure that out later. Alright. Now that everyone is here, pack everything up. It's time to head home. Yes, Lady Rimuru, they all shouted excitedly. Oh, oh, oh. S Group POV. Meanwhile, I see. Thank you for your report. Currently in the Kingdom of Blumend. An adventure group of 3, Eren, Kaval, and Gito returned from exploring the sealed cave that the Storm Dragon was in before he disappeared. I'm giving you 3 days paid vacation, including today. When that's done, head back to the forest to investigate further. You may go. He says. Like he's the boss of me. Kabul shouted as each of them were on the street again after the meeting. I wish you'd actually say that to his face. Gito suggested before they continued walking through the city. Back to that forest in 3 days, huh, Eren sighed. Pardon me. Would you happen to be heading to the great forest of Jura? The 3 of them look behind and see a woman with a mask. My name is Shizu. If it's not too much trouble, do you mind if I accompany you?